Greetings all! Today, we will be examining the common bug-type Pokemon Caterpie, the Worm Pokémon, its relatively uncommon evolution Metapod, the Cocoon Pokémon, and its final, uncommon bug-flying type evolution Butterfree, the Butterfly Pokémon. The members of the Caterpie family belong to the order Lepidoptera and the suborder Rhopalocera, and follow the same basic anatomical plan as other butterflies. Caterpie are small caterpillars with a green base color and a yellow underbelly, complete with a yellow tail and yellow ring-like spot markings on the sides of their bodies. They have a red antenna on their head that is used primarily for defense, as well as large black eye spots with yellow rings around them that are designed to frighten off lesser predators, their real eyes being very small and almost invisible in the crevices near their mandible region. Their evolved form Metapod lack many defining features as a result of being encased in a thick, green cocoon made from hardened silk sprayed over themselves prior to evolution. Their cocoon has several jointed plates with which some limited movement can be performed, but for the most part, their bodies are immobile, horn-shaped structures with only a pair of sensitive tissue patches on their sides that detect vibrations and act as photoreceptors used to actually observe their surroundings as they develop internally. The family's final evolution, Butterfree, possesses a body form that matches its biological identity as a butterfly quite readily, with typically white scales covering their wings that are marked with black-colored veins that create a pleasing color contrast, though rare tropical variants may have a yellow-orange tinge to the color of their scales due to differing concentrations of toxins within them. Additionally, females can be readily distinguished from males by their wings, as they have a section of black coloration on the lower ends of the wings that males lack. Their bodies are covered with purple hair for the most part, though the hair on their legs and mandibles has a clay blue color instead. They have a pair of antennae that they use for a number of sensory purposes, and their large red compound eyes stand out brilliantly from the rest of their body, creating an overall color palette that is both vibrant and calming at the same time. Caterpie and its evolutions are among several different families of bug-type Pokemon that undergo a natural process of evolution as they progress from their initial caterpillar form into adults, and they tend to do so at a fairly rapid pace, reaching their final adult form at a level of experience so low that only a few other families can match their maturation rate. As a consequence of this, however, they also tend to live fairly short lives in comparison to other Pokemon, and thus tend to focus on numbers when reproducing in the wild rather than the quality of their offspring produced. This is readily observable even in just looking at the stats of these creatures, as Caterpie are among the weakest of Pokemon and have little going for them aside from their HP reserves and speed, and access to the Shield Dust ability as a base ability thanks to a scale-like membrane that covers their exoskeletons. And even those stats are fairly poor compared to other young Pokemon. In this base form, they have little in the way of offense to bear outside of a basic tackle attack, not counting the bug bite attack they can learn to phrase beyond their natural point of evolution, though they can use their string shot technique to encase attackers in sticky silk that rapidly hardens when exposed to the air. This can help to slow them down and potentially even immobilize them so Caterpie have a chance to escape, in turn granting them access to the runaway ability as a hidden ability. When they do prepare themselves to evolve, Caterpie will coat their bodies in successive layers of their silk until their entire bodies are coated in the substance, encasing them in a thick cocoon and facilitating their evolution into Metapod. While well-trained Metapod can still move around in this form, most wild Metapod do not have the strength to do so, and their only means of defense is to excrete additional layers of their silk as a harden technique. This is reflected in their stats, EV yield, and ability as well, as they go from an EV yield of 1 in HP to 2 in defense when they evolve. Their base attack stat is actually reduced in favor of an increased base defense stat, and their ability is automatically converted to the Shed Skin ability. Thankfully for Metapod, they do not have to wait long before they finish transforming internally and emerge from their cocoon as an adult Butterfree. While they suffer a slight drop in their base defense stat as a result of losing their hard cocoon, everything else about them improves noticeably as they evolve into Butterfree, and their EV yield changes from 2 in defense to 2 in special attack and 1 in special defense. Not only do they gain access to a number of potent offensive and status-inflicting moves in evolution, but they gain an additional secondary flying type assignment, and in turn the immediate capacity to use a gust attack, plus their natural ocular anatomy grants them access to compound eyes as a base ability, though in rare cases a mutation in their lens structure can allow them to instead have the tinted lens ability as their hidden ability. However, The rapid maturation comes at the cost of much power and combat effectiveness, as almost all of Butterfree's base stats are below average for both of their types. The only exception is their base special attack stat, which is above average for a fully evolved bug-type Pokemon. As such, their overall usefulness can be limited for young trainers, and they can often struggle against other fully evolved Pokemon, but they still have a few nasty tricks in their wing scales that can make them a status-inflicting hazard in battle. Because the lifespan is quite short, Caterpie spend the majority of their lives voraciously eating large quantities of leaves without hesitation, sometimes as much as 100 a day, even if they are larger than the creatures themselves. While they do feed on leaves off the forest floor on occasion, sometimes going as far as to hide in piles of leaves that match the color of their bodies in order to hide from predators, they more often than not feed on leaves while they are still on trees, so there is greater coverage to hide them from predators, using the tiny suction cups that are attached to the bottoms of their short feet to adhere to the sides of trees and any surface for that matter, climbing up them in ready fashion without exerting much in the way of effort. Because they are so common, and the body is relatively soft and unprotected, these creatures often serve as food for bird Pokemon, and while the limited offensive capabilities can make life difficult for them, they do have one interesting defense that can help them out in a tight spot. If these insectoids are attacked, and contact is made with their red antenna, it will release a horrible smelling gas that can be smelled from many meters away, driving away lesser predators in droves as they try to escape the horrendous smell and the burning sensation it leaves in the nostrils of all that smell it. Unfortunately, large predators are not so easily deterred by the smell, and will gladly feed on Caterpie regardless of its presence. As these creatures grow, they constantly shed their skin, which is beneficial to the environment, as their discarded exoskeletons provide the soil they fall upon a great deal of nutrition as they decompose, fertilizing the same foliage that provides Caterpie their food, until they have enough energy stored in their body to finally begin the process of metamorphism. Once this time comes, the creatures will use their string shot technique to rapidly coat themselves in successively thickening layers of silk. The material itself is incredibly sticky and hardens shortly after coming in contact with the air, forming a thick shell around them as they finally transition into their pupa stage and evolve into Metapod. As Metapod, these creatures cannot normally move around that much for fear of damaging their tender insides. During the metamorphosis process, their original Caterpie bodies effectively liquefy into a thick liquid, as their cells change form and converge into new structures that will eventually form their adult body. While in this state, these creatures are highly vulnerable despite the cocoon that is protecting them. On the one hand, the cocoon that protects them is as hard as a steel slab, and very difficult to break with blunt force trauma, even to the point where sledgehammers cannot be used to penetrate the shell after a few doses of a Metapod's harden technique, which they can uniquely perform almost instantly and indefinitely by releasing successive layers of silk around their frames from tiny pores in the cocoon to make them nearly impenetrable within a short period of time. However, while the shell is strong in this regard, it is weak along crevices that form along the shell as mobility plates. While Metapods should not move in order to keep themselves as safe as possible, these plates exist to allow the creatures to actually move in rare cases where it is needed to protect themselves. Wild Metapod rarely take this option, preferring to let their defenses keep them safe while hiding among leaves like Caterpie to avoid detection by predators, but trained Metapod can flex the muscles anchoring the insides of the beast to the material connecting these plates to utilize a weak tackle attack and leap small distances to escape predators, using the sensitive patches of material on the sides of their bodies as vibration sensors and photoreceptors to see their attackers and move in a direction far away from them. If they perform this makeshift tackle from a great height, they can actually crack weak armor with the blow, making them somewhat of a threat against other young Pokemon. However, this is done at their own peril, because if the plates or the cocoon as a whole is moved too violently, such as through a sudden impact in the right spot, it can cause the plates to separate and eject the developing creature on the inside prematurely, resulting in almost immediate death for the developing Butterfree inside. These plates can also be taken advantage of by intelligent bird Pokemon, who can focus their pecking at these crevices to pull the shell apart, rendering the otherwise powerful defenses of Metapod completely moot. Moreover, they are not invulnerable to piercing strikes from Pokemon like Beedrill, which can cleave through the thick casing due to its fibrous structure and kill the developing creature inside. Thankfully for Metapod, the nutritional value of their insides is usually less than what is worth for the energy needed to crack open their shells, so most predators will leave them be in the wild. As a result, using Metapod in battle is a risky option, as intense conflicts can easily penetrate their shells and result in their premature demise. The best thing that a trainer can do with them is to use them in light battle at most, and generally just let them mature on their own, and keep them safe until they emerge from their cocoon as a fully developed Butterfree. Once they emerge from their cocoon fully formed as Butterfree, these creatures switch over to a diet of nothing but honey and tree sap, but the particular type of honey that they feed on is one of their own creation. Butterfree will flit about from flower to flower, gathering pollen using the fine hairs on their legs and nectar using their mandibles, and mixing them together at their nest to make a low viscosity, semi-sweet honey that tastes somewhat bland and is thus unpopular with other organisms, but is otherwise a treat to Butterfree, and serves as the primary component of their diet. They are extremely sensitive to the smell of flower nectar, thanks to powerful sensory nerves in their antennae, and can actually smell a fresh flower with them from over 6 miles away, allowing them to easily pinpoint sources of the ingredients they need to make this staple food item. This honey is also what these creatures choose to feed their Caterpie offspring when they are very young, before they are old enough to be able to feed on the leaves that comprise the majority of their diet, and subsequently leave the nest. Because they are highly dependent upon their honey for survival, Butterfree will often fight over flower patches with Pokemon like Cutiefly, and fly to warmer locations when winter arrives in order to remain in a place where flowers are still plentiful. To this end, it should be noted that specific types of plants can have an effect on the body pigmentation of these insects when they feed on them as Caterpie, causing their bodies to change color to more vibrant shades in rare cases when they reach adulthood, as seen in the case of the ultra-rare pink Butterfree variant. While Butterfree are fairly peaceful creatures, they do contain a nasty secret that can make them a bit of a hazard to those that are not wary of them in battle. The scales on the wings of Butterfree, in addition to being waterproof and in turn allowing them to fly even in rain, which is especially helpful in the springtime, also contain a mixture of toxins that grants these insects relatively early access to the poison powder, stun spore, and sleep powder techniques, as well as the silver wind and rage powder moves later in life. They release these toxic scales every time they flap their wings harshly, so just being near them can be enough to trigger a toxic reaction to them, and can thus be a hazard for anything that gets too close to them. Even at a distance, there is little protection, as Butterfree can flap their wings at high speeds and use their gust and whirlwind moves to blow the toxic scales across decently long distances. This is their primary means of existing as a true threat to even bird Pokemon, and will use their toxic scales to repel any that try to feed on their offspring while still under their care. Combined with their access to limited psychic power through confusion and Psybeam attacks, this can make Butterfree a bit of a hazard to encounter without status healing moves and items, and in turn is the main aspect of the creatures that trainers should take note of if they wish to use their power to its maximum potential. While they might be quite weak initially and not among the strongest of Pokemon, the members of the Caterpie family are still common threats that many trainers in the lands they occupy will have to learn to deal with, no matter if they or an opponent is using them. They might certainly be outclassed by other fully evolved Pokemon, but the sheer quickness with which they can reach adulthood can still make them useful allies for novice trainers just starting out on their journey. If you're looking for a bit of a rest and could use some help in taking a nap though, a quick dose of sleep powder from these insectoids can definitely do the trick. Just make sure they are trained to dose you with the right stuff, as getting a dose of poison powder or stun spore instead can result in vile effects that can ruin just about anyone's day. Thank you all for watching this video. It is always an honor to be able to speak with you all on the subject of Pokemon in a way that brings me great joy and happiness in my work. If you would like to keep tabs on past and future work, click that subscribe button, check out my work on DeviantArt, and don't be shy about following me on Twitter, where you can find pertinent announcements on upcoming work before it is officially posted. Links to both can be found in the video description. If you would like to support my work and help Miguel and I continue to produce more content for you and improve upon our presentation, please visit us at my Patreon page, which you can also find a link to in the video description. With that, I thank you for watching and I wish you well.